So this week's Torah portion is called Emor. And so we still find ourselves in the middle of this holiness code of the book of Leviticus, the third book of the Torah. It's a detailed description this week of all the laws pertaining to the ritual eligibility of the priests in the cultic life of biblical Israel. They are conduits to God, and the priests have specific guidelines and boundaries and qualifications to fulfill in order to serve. We're told that a priest must be unblemished, that they must radiate perfection, that all of our offerings that she brings must also be perfect. And so, as we move through Leviticus and these Torah portions, and I seek to transform the text as a blueprint for living and our biblical characters as archetypes that live within us, I'm challenged by our Torah's directives around the fitness of a high priest. Our text lists various defects that render a person a priest ineligible to bring food to God. And so, last week we talked all about each one of us as being high priests and priestesses, that we have that potential within each and every one of us. And so, given this, how are we to understand what this weekly wisdom is asking of us to be without defects, to be unblemished, to be perfect? Knowing full well that we are all flawed and full of imperfections, and it is our imperfections that make us who we are. In other places of the Torah, we are called to be a mamlechet kohanim, a nation of priests, each one of us fulfilling the priestly function of mediating between the human and the divine. In fact, I would suggest that to awaken to our lives and enter into it fully is to recognize our blemishes, embracing our imperfections and learning from them, for they are what make us unique. To be modern day priests and priestesses is to celebrate being holy, imperfect beings, to bring our blemishes into our sacred practice. And by doing so, it doesn't disqualify us from our ritual practice, but uplifts us. So this is perhaps where I diverge from the text or maybe build upon it. I honor the biblical account and approach to the cultic practice and recognize that our ancestors had a ritual hierarchical society of Kohanim, of Leviim, and Yisrael. And that to this day, this division still exists in some worship services. And I still feel that the priest, the Levite, the Yisraelite, are all working within us, cultivating our sanctuary. We are all Kohanim, high priests and priestesses, tending to the garden of our souls, offering food to God through prayer and deed. We are all Levites, singing the tune that echoes in the innermost chambers of our bodies. And we are all Yisrael, grappling day to day, learning what God consciousness is all about, of living a life where we perceive God as an energy of love and goodness that permeates all existence. And so all of this is going inside of ourselves all the time, and it's a beautifully busy sanctuary. But our sanctuary doesn't end at the borders of our bodies. Like the incense that is lit in the tabernacle and that wafts outwards, so too we are called to extend our sacred work in this world beyond our beings and intimate circles to all sentient beings and this earth, maybe even the universe. I don't know if we're at the multiverse yet, but maybe one day. This is why in our Torah, this reading, that alongside we get this whole list of all of the holidays, we are also reminded of this vital earth-based practice. Our holidays are the jewelry, the adornments of our year. They give us checkpoints to tap back into the earth and celebrate our intimate connections with her. And it is with this in mind that our text stops in the telling about our holidays and directs us. It says, "And when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap all the way to the edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am the Eternal. Leave the corners of your fields for those in need." Rabbi Arthur Waskow asks, why this interruption in the flow of our holidays, of our holy days, in order to talk to us about this social earth-based practice? I can only tell, he says, how it makes me feel. That if we stopped sharing our harvest with the poor, the rhythms and the flow of the harvest itself would stop. Another reminder from the Torah that the meaning of Yud He Vav He, God, interbreathing, is that social justice and earth abundance can never be severed. Rabbi Waskow reminds us that Judaism is an earth-based and earth-bound tradition, that all living beings are intimately connected to each other and the environment. Our celebrations of our holidays and the health of our sanctuary are dependent upon how we treat our earth and those in need. Indeed, we are taught in the Sifra, a 2nd century commentary on Leviticus, that anyone who gives the harvest leavings to the poor, as is proper, we account it for him as if he built the holy temple and offered sacrifices within it. This practice of leaving the corners of our fields for those in need makes us not only priests and priestesses, but sanctuary builders as well. My teacher, Rabbi Greenstein, shares an insight from Rav Avodia Sforno, who comments on this last phrase of the sentence, where at the end of the directive to leave our corners of our field open, it says, I am Yud He Vav He, I am the source of all life. When it says this is God that is speaking directly to the needy, to the poor, saying, I'm on your side. God is not only speaking to the privileged, but to everyone. This is not an us versus them situation. God is with those on the periphery. God dwells in the corners of the field, left for those who are most in need. May we awaken to that. And so when I speak about sanctuary, which has been a recurring theme for us throughout the whole book of Leviticus, because we're always focused, it's all focused on the inner workings of the sanctuary, I want us all to hear the expansive nature of sanctuary, right? Sanctuary is dancing with God in the sanctuary of our bodies, leaving space for those to find sanctuary in our fields, giving portions of ourselves to those in need, giving sanctuary to this earth, letting it grow wild, uncultivated, by rebalancing our domination over it. So what are the ways that we can fulfill this mitzvah today? I know we all have maybe little gardens, but there's mostly concrete where we're living. So what are other ways that we can give honor to this mitzvah? So some things that I've been thinking about, what I can do right now is, we can make donations towards India to support them. American Jewish World Service is doing a lot of work to help support that. We can buy food for somebody on the corner of our block. If we see someone a lot that we normally pass by, maybe we can stop and buy them something. We can do work by supporting our food pantries, helping animals in need, watching relevant documentaries. We talked about Seaspiracy, and I still recommend everyone watch that. We can eat less meat and fish than we normally do. We can move away from single-use plastics. So for me, I see all of these just examples as holy variations of this mitzvah, to leave the corners of our fields for those in need. Our sanctuary extends beyond our bodies to the corner of our block, to those suffering that we don't see, to the forests being clear-cutted and oceans being stripped of biodiversity and stuffed with plastic. There are blemishes and defects that we can honor as part of who we are, and they are our teachers. And there are blemishes and defects in our actions and behaviors that we can fix. The blessing of this week's wisdom is to notice the difference. Mark Nepo teaches us, from the rotting tree felled by lightning to the water resmoothing over the whale when it dives down, everything is of equal sanctity and grace. From the darkness we can't see through to the tenderness of a grandfather afraid to speak, everything and everyone is a teacher. Each flower, each bird, each suffering, great and small, each eroded stone and crack in that stone, each question arising from each crack. Every aspect of life holds some insight that can help us live. We can learn and deepen from anything, anywhere. So to be modern day priests and priestesses is to embrace sanctuary in its myriad of forms, seeing everything as a teacher, especially our imperfections. To continually build our sanctuary as a field of dreams and leave space for others to join in as well. To seek out pathways of goodness, forever tending to our earth and those in need. Shabbat Shalom.